Hi everyone, welcome back to Ukulele Next Steps with me, Matt Stead. In today's video, we're going to do something different. We're going to look at a piece from my Jazz Standards book. Don't worry if you haven't got the book. There's going to be a free printable PDF of the entire arrangement, a link in the description. And this is one of those rare lessons where I really recommend printing out that PDF or downloading it onto your device before doing the lesson, because we're going to really get into the nitty-gritty of it. I will put portions of the piece on screen as well so you can follow it along with me, but if you can print it off, fantastic. We're going to look at an arrangement of a lovely piece called Love Letters, which was written by Victor Young and Edward Heyman. It's covered by loads of people, including even Elvis, and I think Alison Moyet did a version more recently. I say more recently, it's probably like 40 years ago now, but still. So we're going to break it down. We're going to go measure by measure, and what I really want from the end of this is for you to have a really lovely, beautiful chord melody arrangement that you can do as a bit of a performance piece. So if someone says, oh, I'm hearing you playing the ukulele, you know, play us a tune. It's really lovely to have something really beautiful to play them. And I think this is a really lovely chord melody version. So I think you'll really enjoy this. Now, with previous chord melody pieces, I've explained the construction of it. So I've showed you how these pieces are made. And what I'll do is I'll dip a little bit into that side of it. But today's lesson, I really want to be more involved in reading the tablature and or the sheet music and really looking at the performance and the physical techniques of making this song work. So there'll be a little bit of theory in there, but not too much, just enough to keep it interesting. I think whenever you're working out how to play someone else's arrangement of a piece, if there's an existing video or audio performance of it, I think it's a really good idea to listen to it. Sheet music can contain so much information, and so can tablature, but sometimes there's little nuances and techniques that you can get from watching a video or listening to a piece. So what I've done is I've recorded just a couple of minutes. I've recorded the whole piece through once, and I think it's worth sitting through, watching a bit of my left hand and right hand technique, and just to get an idea of the feel for the piece and the melody. And then afterwards, we'll break it down measure by measure and I'll teach you how to play it. Let's have a listen. Now, generally, when I'm working out how to play a chord melody arrangement, even if it's already arranged and tabbed out for me on the page, I will kind of break it down, and first of all, I'll just look at the melody. I find that really helps me get a feel for the timing and the feel of the piece, which is really, really important. There's a couple of ways to work out what the melody notes are. First of all, you could listen to my original recording and see if you can work it out from that using notes of the scale. But with this particular piece, I've got a tip to help you. Because of the way it's arranged, chord melody style, so that the last note you hear is the melody note, there's an easy way to spot the melody note in the tablature. It's always the highest placed number on the page. I'll show you what I mean. If you have a look at the first two measures, In fact, just at the first two notes, we've got a G and a D note played at the same time, or on your tablature it shows 0 and then 2, right? We'll just take physically the highest positioned number on the page, and that's the 2, isn't it? 0 is below, then we've got the 2. Okay, so that's your melody note, and that's the same all the way through. So in the first two measures, the melody note is that 2, second fret of the C string, that's a D note. And so the first two measures go like this. Just loads of Ds, right? Really simple. One more example, and then you can work the rest out yourself slowly. If you have a look at the third measure, underneath where it says E minor 7, we've got three numbers, 0, 2, 0. Just as I said before, the highest positioned of those numbers on the page is that 0 on the E string, 0, 2, 0, that one there on the E string. That's going to be your melody note. So in this measure, we just play an open E for the whole measure. Same principle on the next measure. We have 4, 4, 3. 3 is the highest placed on the page. That's your melody note. That's a G note, third fret of the E string. And what I want you to do is take your time, work through that first line, working out the melody notes. And it should sound something like this when you play. I'm just going to pick them with my thumb. That's all I'm going to do with everything today. Picking with my thumb where the body of the ukulele meets the neck. It will sound something like this. So there you can hear the melody coming through, and that's really important because it gives you that feel for the timing, as I say. One point of interest and something worth noting, we have a tied note. If you have a look on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th measure, we've got a 0 with a tie and then another 0. Can you see that? Underneath where it says A minor 7 flat 5, that's a mouthful, isn't it? And D7. Whenever you have a tied note, you just hit it the first time. So if I play the measure before underneath where it says A minor 7, I'm going to play 0, 2, 3 or E, F sharp, G. I'm going to hit that 0 or A note once, and I'm not going to play the second one. So then I have my 3, 2. Okay. So wherever you have a tied note, just play the first one. And what I'd like you to do, I'm not going to go through this with you in every line, but as you practice your way through this song, each time you get a new line, I'd like you to see if you can work out that melody first to get a feel for it. And then you can come back to the video and we'll work on the next few measures. So let's work out how to physically play this first line then. We'll go measure by measure. Here we go. As I mentioned at the start, I really want to concentrate on playing this piece today with you. So I'm not going to go massively into the theory, but just to explain how this is working in general, you might look at the first measure and think a G major 7 chord, that would look like this. 0, 2, 2, 2 from nose to toes. But what is written in the tablature doesn't look like a G major 7 chord. We just have two notes, 0 and 2, or G and D. Now what's happening there is, we worked this out in an earlier video, again link in the description. What's happening there is we're playing a G major 7 chord, but we're stopping when we hit the melody note. And in this case, because the melody note is the D on the C string, that means I can't play these bottom two strings because I wouldn't hear that D last. It would complicate things. So that's why it says G major 7, but in effect, we've just got 0 and 2. Now, there's a couple of ways you can tackle that. You could hold down a G major 7 and just play the top two like this. Okay. Or you could just hold that index finger or second finger if you prefer at the second fret of the C string and then follow it with the 2 D notes. So. The reason, normally I recommend holding chords down as much as you can because quite often the notes that follow come from that chord. But in this case, I really like to just hold down one finger because I like to give it a little wobble, a little bit of vibrato, which gives it a bit of character. So the first two measures are this. Notice my finger isn't moving from that position at all. 0, 2, 2, 2, 0, 2, little gap, 2, 2. The next measure is based on an E minor 7 chord, which looks like this. But because the melody note is this E note here, on the 3rd string down physically, I have to stop once I've hit that melody note so you can hear it. And that's why we end up with 0, 2, 0, because we don't need to play that A string. So that's really neat, isn't it? Because if you think about it, that means that measure, you can keep your finger where it started again, just play the top 3 strings. So if I put the whole first 3 measures together, bit vibrato. Okay, there we go. So nice and simple. I've not even had to move that left hand. Notice I'm just strumming down very lightly with my thumb for this one. I tend to use the middle part of my thumb, so try not to use the outside edge of your thumb because it can sound a bit woolly. It's okay, but if you get the middle part of the thumb, you get a warmer and a clearer tone. The next measure, we have something that looks altogether different for an E minor 7, and this is me as an arranger just having fun. Remember that every chord in the world, G7 for instance, you can play in lots of different places depending on which inversion you use. And the first one we used, you can think of first position E minor 7, but this time I've used this E minor 7 up here. Okay, this is another way we can play E minor 7 up the fretboard. Basically what it is it's a D minor 7 chord, which we've used in other pieces, moved up 2 frets. Now, because the measure before we were only playing 3 notes, I've kept it consistent. So you actually don't need that little finger on the A string. We don't go that far. We just hold, it looks like a D minor shape down on the 3rd and 4th frets, and just strum the 3 strings nearest your nose. Okay. So I'm going to put the first 4 measures together now. It will sound something like this. One type of E minor 7 and another. The next measure is easy peasy lemon squeezy. We're just dragging our thumb over the top 3 strings open physically, and then adding 2 and 3 on the E string, which is F sharp and G. Okay. I tend to keep my finger on the F sharp note as I play the G next to it, which just replaces it, just for comfort. Now, just a little technique I want you to notice. Notice as I drag my thumb over those top 3 strings physically. It's my arm that's moving. My thumb stays the same. So what we don't want is this. We want the whole arm to move and my thumb to drag down. What that does is it's just a way of creating a bit more warmth. When we strum this way, because the muscles aren't quite so strong and the way the thumb passes over the strings, changing positions as it goes, it doesn't quite have the warmth of just dragging the whole arm down. So experiment with that for that measure. And then I will use my thumb just moving to pick the next 2 notes. The next measure, we have an A minor 7 flat 5 chord. That's a mouthful, isn't it? It's otherwise known as a half diminished chord. Don't worry about the chord shape and why it exists for now. Just get physically used to playing it. We're going to play 2, 3, 3. I use my 1st, 2nd and 3rd fingers, and we're going to strum all the way. Now notice the D7, the A note of the D7 is tied. So remember, we don't play the 2nd tied note. So what I do is I strum that 1st chord, I change to this simple D7 shape, and I only play the top 3 strings physically, G, C and E. So I have this, and then I add this finger down for the G note, the 3, take it off, gives me the F sharp, the 2. So that whole measure, if I do that slowly, will look like this. Okay, the A half diminished chord, D7, finger on and off. Okay. And then to finish off that line, we go to a full G major 7 chord and just strum it out all the way and have a rest. So that completes the first kind of phrase and the first line. what I'd like you to do is pause the video, have a look at the sheet and see if you can work on that slowly. Remember melody first and then try following my video through bit by bit and see if you can play it. Practice it a few times, get comfortable with it, and then we'll look at the next line. Here's a playthrough up close just so you can copy what I'm doing. I'll talk you through it as we go. So 0, 2, and again, top 3 strings, up to D minor shape at 3rd fret, top 3 open, 2, 3, then we have this shape here, D7 shape, G and off, and then add G major 7. There we go. Now next measure has a C sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord. A mouthful, right? But otherwise known as a C sharp half diminished chord, which is a lot easier to say. Don't worry about the theory behind it. Let's just work out how to play it. It's very simple. Literally, it's just 0, 2, 0, 1. So it's like an A7 with this finger added here in terms of the shape. And we just strum that all the way. And then we've got 2 B notes, which is your 2 on the A string. Notice your finger's in the right place already. And this is what we want to keep going through this whole piece. It's really important. Try and keep the chord shape held down whilst you play the notes that follow it. So here we have. Then the next measure, we're going to do a similar thing. Just in terms of the theory, if anyone's interested, this is based on an F sharp 7 chord up here. It's like a D7 chord that we've just keep moving up until it goes to an F sharp. So we've got an F sharp 7 chord. The melody note is this note here, which is a B flat note on the E string. And that is why rather than having that shape, we don't need that finger because we're only going to strum down the top 3 strings physically. Okay. We have a tied note that follows, so you can ignore the next note, that other 6. Keep that finger down just like we did on the last chord as you play these next 2 notes. So we strum the top 3. Second finger plays the 7th fret of the E string. And then our little 3rd finger or little finger reaches up to the 9th fret for the next note. So we have, see that? Just brushing top 3, add a finger, and it keeps it nice and smooth. Okay, so those 2 measures from the C sharp half diminished will sound like this. Notice she's got that nice smoothness. The next measure features a B minor 7 chord, and this one is played all the way because the melody note is on the A string. This used to be my bogey chord. This is quite a difficult one to play. I'll show you how to do it, and then I'll also show you a little cheat which will help you if you find this too difficult. So what I like to do to create this chord is I take my 2nd finger and I put it on the bottom 2 strings physically, the E and the A strings at the 5th fret. Okay, and you can practice making sure they're ringing out clear. Then I take my 3rd fret and I reach it right over, okay, to the C string next fret, okay? And again, you can check those are all still ringing out, okay? So we've got a double, like a mini bar here on those 2, and then we're reaching over and strumming. Now I say all, this is a tricky bit, but the index finger needs to come up here. You might think you've got a bar the whole of that 4th fret, and you can do, but really all it's doing is putting pressure on this note on the G string because the other 3 strings are already covered, right? So we kind of put that one up there and strum all the way, and you get that B minor 7 chord. It's awkward because notice this 2nd finger has to bend back on itself. So that one can take a little bit of practice to get used to. If you really struggle with that and you still want to play the piece, don't panic. There's a bit of a cheat, okay? What you can do is ignore the note up here on the G string and just use your 1st and 2nd fingers to play mini bar on the 5th fret and use your 2nd finger to reach up to the next fret up and just strum the C, E and A strings physically, bottom 3 physically. So you don't have to worry about that. So that is a lot easier than this one. But if you are strumming all 4 strings, you do need this finger on up here. So a little cheat just in case you really struggle with that one. Okay. Next up, we've got a diminished shape. Well, what looks like a diminished shape, but it's actually a 7 flat 9. Don't worry about why I've got two chords with with different names, same shape. I do have a video explaining that. I'll put a link in the description. But just know this is the same shape that we use for a diminished 7, and it's 4 5 4 5. I kind of think of it like your fingers down here on the A string with your little finger, and then the rest just form like a G shape on the top 3 strings. So 5 4 5 4. Okay, and both of those are held for a measure. So we have the B minor 7, just let it ring out, and then change to the E7 flat 9. Okay, not too bad. Once you put a bit of practice into those, you'll soon get those. Next up, next bit's quite easy because it's based on an A minor 7, which is the easiest chord to play in the world, no fingers at all. So we strum all the way, hit 2 A notes. Now we have that E7 flat 9 chord again, but the melody note this time is on the E string, the 3rd string down. So we can hold that chord shape, or we can just hold what we need to on the top 3 strings and just strum and stop after you've hit the note on the E string. Okay. So we've got. Okay. Then we hit an A and a B, 0 2. And then at the start of the next line, A minor 7, another version of. Hit the open E. And then a D7. But we stop after we've hit the E string because we want this note here, this F sharp, to ring out. Okay, and you can see how that's working all the way through. That D7 normally we would strum all the way, and if we did, the last thing we would hear would be an A string, but we'll want to hear this note as the melody note. So we stop, and I find if you physically stop your thumb on the next string, it stops you playing it. And it also means this note, the melody note, rings out really nice and clear. Okay. So just like with the first line, I'd like you to take your time, pause the video, make sure you've got that, get really comfortable with it, and put it together measure by measure. I'll do a very slow play through now, up close, so you can see what's happening. So pause the video, practice that through, make sure you're really comfortable with it. But here's a very slow play through showing you how I do it, so you can practice along with me. So we're starting from that C sharp half diminished chord, that 0 1 0 2. We strum all the way. Bar the 6th fret, but strum the top 3. Add your fingers for 7 and 9. That's it. Then we go to this B minor 7 chord. Remember, we can do that one if you're not confident enough for this one, which is fine. Then the E7 flat 9, which looks like a diminished. Open A minor 7. E7 flat 9, but just strum the top 3. 0 2. A minor 7 like this. Open E. And then top 3 of a D7. Not too bad, is it? With practice, you can get that. Take your time. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you will notice 2 thin bar lines after the line that we just played. And that is to tell you that we're at the end of a section. And this is the end of the A section, if you like, or the verse. And that's brilliant because it means we're halfway already. Now, this second verse is very similar to the first one. So actually, there's a lot of repetition. So you're kind of more than halfway in terms of what we need to work out, which is brilliant. In fact, the next 2 measures are exactly the same as the first 2 measures. And the start of the next measure along, we just strum the top 3 of that E minor 7, exactly the same. Now, as an arranger, what I try to do when I have 2 verses that are very similar or identical, I like to mix it up a bit the second time through. And when you do your own arranging, I think that's really important. It keeps it interesting for the listener, it keeps it interesting for you, and it makes it more musically dynamic. So this is what I've done. Where I've got this E minor 7 chord, remember we can play an E minor 7 here. We can play it here like a D minor 7 moved up. We can also play an E minor 7 by barring the whole of the 7th fret. And I've used that inversion, we call it, up here at the 7th fret. So what I've done is when I get to that E minor 7, I play 1 down here, to keep it consistent, when I play this 7th fret, I just play the top 3 strings. And then I play the one we did before at the 3rd and 4th fret twice. Okay. So that makes those first 4 measures after the break this. First position, 7th fret, back down to 3 and 4 twice. Okay. It's just a way of filling out that measure and making it just a bit more dynamically interesting for the listener. The next measure copies something exactly that you did in the first section. So we have an A-7, but we're just strumming the top 3 strings because we want the E melody note coming out. F sharp, G, 2, 3. Then we have that A half diminished chord. And notice there's a little trick I didn't show you the first time, I've just remembered it now. After we hit that A-7 and the 2, 3, you can keep that 3rd finger where it is and build that A-7 flat 5, A half diminished, over the top. So we have half for D7 and 3, 2. Okay, let's put that together. Now this next measure, it almost feels like it goes to 6/8 timing, but I don't want you to overthink it. All I want you to do is put your fingers on a G major 7 chord, which is just 0, 2, 2, 2 from nose to toes. And I want you to strum lightly with your thumb, and I want you to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As simple as that, okay? Then we're going to go to a G sharp diminished 7. This is a really common thing to happen if we have some form of G major chord to go to a G sharp diminished 7. It just builds up the tension. It's the same shape as the E7 flat 9 chord we did earlier. Don't worry about why for now. So we hold that chord down. Now this time we're going to strum 1, 2, 3. And then on the 4th, I like to strum using my nail. You could, if you haven't got a nail, just strum a bit harder with the pad of your thumb. So in effect, if I go from that G major 7, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Soft, 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 hard. And notice by strumming that last chord with a bit more volume, it creates a kind of like a full stop to the end of that piece. Okay, what I'm going to do before we enter the final phrase, I'm going to play from the break. So I'm going to go right up to where we had the double lines, where we've got G major 7. I'll come in really close and you can copy it along, and this will put together this part of the song. So G major 7, we're at measure 17. So 3rd line down after the double break, where we have those 2 lines going down. I'm going to start with that 0, 2. Top 3 of E-7, go up to 7, back down to 3 and 4. Off for A-7, 2, 3, that A half diminished, top 3 of D7, 3, 2, pad of the thumb, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're nearly there, folks. You're doing so well. This next bit, in actual fact, you're over the hardest bit of the song. The next bit's like you're almost on the home straight, and we even slow down at the end, which makes it even easier, but it sounds really lovely. So I'm going to have a look at measure 25 now, which is the C major 7 chord. And this time, because the melody note is on the A string, it's that B, we're going to strum it all the way. C major 7 all the way. It's just holding your finger down at the 2nd fret of the A string, strumming all the way. Off for A, put it back on for the B. So we have an F7 chord, which is based on this shape up at 5 and 6. But because we need this D note on the 5th fret, we're just barring the whole of the 5th fret. Just bar the whole of the 5th fret and strum all the way. Then we've got 3 notes on the E string. I want you to keep that bar there if you can, from that F7 chord. And reach up with your little finger to the 8th fret, 3rd finger to the 7th fret, and then take it away, gives you the 5th fret. So we have this. See how I keep that chord there the whole time. And then we keep that lovely descending melody going. We come down to a G major 7th chord, but we have a C melody note. That's why it doesn't look like that. It looks like this, where we've added this C. So what I do is I bar the whole of the the bottom 3 strings of the 2nd fret with my index finger, and I use my 2nd finger to play the C note here. I take it away and hit the A string, gives me that 2. Take everything off for the A, play G note here at the 3rd fret of the E. And then to finish off this phrase, I pull that finger back and I form this weird looking B flat diminished 7 chord. Don't worry about why it's there for now. Just 1, 2, 2, strum it to the E string. And then I form a G shape on the top 3 strings like this. Okay. I'm going to piece that together from the C major 7, measure 25. Let's do it slowly. Okay. Strum all the way. Off for A, back on for B. Whole of the 5th fret, reach up to 8, 7, 5 off, G major 7 shape with that finger added on the C note, take it away, off, 3rd fret for G, and then this 1, 2, 2, and 1, 2, 1. Isn't that lovely? Now above those 2 measures, measures 28 and onwards, can you see there's the word RIT, RIT? That's short for retardo. There's lots of different RITs depending on how slow you want to go. But just thinking about this as we're slowing down now, so it's like we've hit the brakes on the piece because we're coming to the end. And I love to do this in my arrangements. Some people find it cheesy, I don't. I find it really kind of emotional and kind of melancholic, and it just brings the whole thing lovely to an end. So as we hit those last 2 chords, B flat diminished 7, that's that 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. Everything you do now, go consciously slower. So we have A minor 7, top 3 strings physically, 2 E's, remember we're slowing down, D7 with that C melody note added, that 3. Move that finger up a string and strum all the way, gives us D7 flat 9. Then we have this B note here, this 2. But what I want to do is I don't want to lose all of the fingers, all of the sound of that D7 flat 9 chord like this. Notice how it just kills everything dead. So there's a couple of ways we can get this B note without ruining the whole chord. The first is we strum the chord and we only move that middle finger. Can you see? If you sneak your eyes in between these 2 fingers, it just moves down. And then it keeps these 2 notes still ringing out. Another way you can do it is to kind of flatten it, which is slightly awkward. Sometimes that can kill the chord a bit. I think that's the easiest way. And then finish off, the very last thing we do, we play a G chord, what looks like a G chord, and we just strum the top 3 strings, and it's that lovely end. So as you hit this last bit, I'm going to go from measure 28 now. Going to finish it off. Okay, measure 28. I want to consciously slow down, and also notice at the end we have a decrescendo, like an arrow pointing this way. That means we're going slower but also quieter. So we have that B flat diminished 7, that 1, 2, 2. Now consciously slow it down, 1, 2, 1. A minor 7, top 3. D7 with that added note, really light now. Move that finger up, drop the finger down, and then final notes as quiet and as slow as you can. Lovely. Fantastic. So as with everything else, let's put the whole of that last bit together. I'm going to go from measure 25. I'm going to come in really close so you can see what I'm doing. That's that C major 7, 0, 0, 0, 2. Okay, so we strum that all the way. Off. Bar the 5th fret. 8, 7, 5. G major 7 with that finger added here. Take it away. Off, G note. Now we're slowing down 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 1. You can take your time now. Open A minor 7, top 3. D7 with that finger added nice and light now. Move it up. Move the finger down for that B note. And then finally the top 3 of a G chord. Lovely, lovely. Now just quickly for you music theory nerds, including myself, why is that last chord called a G6 when it looks like a G major? This is a G6 chord, this is a G major chord. The reason we've still called it a G6 is that the underlying chord is a G6 in the original piece that I've taken this from. And if you're playing with a band, it's lovely to have that sound of a G6 chord. It's just that we've added that G note to it to create that melody note. The final note is the tonic. We almost need to hear that to feel like we've put a full stop at the end of the whole piece. So it's a G6 with a G added. You could call it G major, that's totally cool. I tend to name things after the underlying chord even after I've added the melody note. So if I'm playing with a band or something, they could play the G6 there rather than a G major. Don't sweat it, just interesting bit of theory. Okay, you've made it. If you put all those bits together, yay, you've made it to the end of the whole piece. And in terms of practicing, I think it's really important to break down any chord melody that you play like that. So get that first line ready, perhaps even practice the melody first, and then you can go through each measure at a time. Don't move on to the second line until you're really happy with the first. There's always a temptation when learning a piece to try and play it all the way through because you want to hear how it all sounds and you want to get to the end. I totally understand that, and I was the same when I was learning. But if you want it to sound really nice, break it down line by line. Make sure you're really comfortable with each one before moving on. And that gives you a really beautiful piece of repertoire. I love this song. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And it's a lovely way to show off all those techniques that we've been learning in the last 2.5 courses to really kind of have a piece that's beautiful to play. Take your time with it. It might take a little while to perfect, and that is absolutely fine. Be conscious of all those little techniques, and hopefully this will really help you. So things like when we're doing those kind of triplet strums, making sure you're using the pad of your thumb, and then finishing off with that louder strum. Likewise, those little techniques. So remember, whenever you have a chord, keep that chord held down as you play the next few notes, and that will help you with every chord melody piece that you play from here on in.